means throwing the capo on the 7th fret. And what you're seeing are these shapes, basically an E shape, D shape, sus2, followed by the A, pedaling on through that typical blues progression, that kind of 12-bar approach. Put them all together. Now then that switches to so then the D, A, and E shape. You put all those chords together and consider them, they kind of make up what we call a Mixolydian progression, because you have essentially, if you were just to name these chords, it's a B, A, E, and if I took this capo off, it would be B, A, recently had the pleasure of sitting down with Glen from Players Row in Hawaii, Pennsylvania. It's listed under the Picks and Mortar playlist, if you haven't checked it out yet. We kind of veered into talking about the Rolling Stones a bit, and that kind of dovetails into this episode. In this volume, we tackle Midnight Rambler. Pretty intense song. It's an album track off of Let It Bleed. One that probably doesn't really see a lot of radio play, but if you're somebody who enjoys their albums, this is one that it really kind of encapsulates everything that's great about the Rolling Stones. Starts off kind of sounding like the way, unfortunately today, when there's ever any kind of true crime story breaking, where people get the scoop on it and they want to pass that hot gossip around, that it almost has that kind of water cooler cadence to it, where he's like, hey, did you hear about the Midnight Rambler? No matter how you answer this person, they're going to tell you everything they just learned about this, kind of probably uncomfortable situation. And he asks the question and then immediately follows it up with, well, here's what I know. And then as the song goes on, it gets a little more intense, and then there's all these interesting transformations where you get to really get a feel for how incredible this band is together and what a great, tight act the Rolling Stones is, where like one of them makes like a telekinetic, message to the others and say like, oh, we're gonna change this groove a little bit. We're gonna kind of speed it up. And to me, it's also kind of a commercial for not playing to a click always. When it makes sense, yes. Not using any of those like cheater programs that like level out the playing. They manipulate time and space, and they're doing it together. And making it exciting the way you would when you're live, where songs go a certain percentage faster because you're trying to elicit energy from the crowd. I'm going to switch it over to the conversation that I was having with Glen, and then we'll pick it up after. You're not partial to Mick Taylor versus Brian versus
no, because they've had
Wood.
all of these wonderful guitar players.
Yeah,
and Keith's the glue that holds the band together. Keith and Charlie.
Yeah, Midnight Rambler was the one that
okay.
So I put that in there.
Yeah, it was written about Albert DeSalvo,
who was
the Boston Strangler.
Oh, so that is, because in the song it's not one of those. So I always wondered if it's not.
No, it's according to Mick.
Okay.
It was right about the time that Albert DeSalvo was on trial or convicted, one or the other. It was right around the trial period.
Gotcha.
And after terrorizing Boston for years and years,
Okay.
But there was an influence,
Right.
It wasn't about him necessarily, but it was about that kind of fear.
Yeah.
And those kind of people.
This is one, I guess, was a standout, and therefore, kind of makes sense in the context of these killer tunes, murder ballads, where it's really telling the story from within. But then it kind of, the way that this song is delivered, it becomes really unhinged, and at a certain point, the vocal switches to like a first person, and it becomes very confrontational. And it's, instead of saying hypothetically, or instead of telling the story of what was going on with these events, it becomes more about almost a threat to the listener, which, you know, does add a different element. And they're all these songs are very different from one another, but this one kind of sits in its own lane in that regard. Murder ballads do tell you a lot about the times that they're representing, and this one's no different. So hope you enjoyed. Definitely check out the original track, and if you feel like checking out that guitar, it's really very, very doable. And the rest of the song, the parts that weren't featured or demonstrated, they really are just different iterations of those same chords. You could play a zillion other songs that have those chords in it, and none of them sound just like this one. And I think that one of the hallmarks of a Keith Richards tune is that he gets the perfect sound. He dials in just the perfect frequencies and never breaks a sweat doing so. Knowing how to put it together and knowing, which inversions of those chords are going to sound best with each other explains why he's a legend and why that band has been recording for over 60 years. So have fun. See you on the next one.